So I spend 2 whole class days looking at pennies with my students. Stick around and find out why. You ever really looked at a penny? I mean, really looked at a penny. There's a lot of information here on such a small object. It's amazing that you can spend 2 days with your students examining an everyday item that they've seen and passed over so many times. But when you look with an archaeologist's eye, there's so much to read of such a tiny object. So this 2-day activity that I do with my students early on in the year really pays off in the end. It's a low stakes activity. Take a look. What does the artifact that you've been given look like? What does it feel like? Are there words on it? What do the words say? Oh, there's a person with a face on one side. On the reverse, there's a building, some more words, and even some words in a language that doesn't quite seem like the others. So that first day is all about students practicing those skills of observation and writing down detailed notes about what it is that they see. Now, in conjunction with the penny activity, I'm also introducing the definition of history we're going to use over the whole course of the year, and I use Jill Lepore's definition. She calls history an endlessly interesting argument where evidence is everything and storytelling is everything else. So that first day is all about looking, observing, seeing as the object is. So on day 2, I ask my students to take their hands, spread their fingers wide, and then bring their hands together. And I ask them to think about how this relates to the definition of history that we use. And so giving them this visual, they can see that their fingers, when they're outstretched, don't quite come together all the way. And so when you think about your fingers as evidence, each piece of evidence fits the story somewhat complete, but there's still points where there's gaps between the fingers. And that is what Jill Lepore means when she says storytelling is everything else. We can't know everything through the evidence. And so there has to be some element of storytelling, some element where historians are going to have to fill in the gaps. And day 2 of the penny archaeology activity is all about filling in the gaps. And they use the power of inference to help figure out the story that they want to tell. So I introduce the concept of what inferences are. I also talk a little bit about the difference between opinions and arguments, and how inferences are like arguments, your claims supported with evidence. And as groups, they look through their evidence that they wrote down, their observations. And from there, they draw inferences about the society who created this coin. They have the ability to work with metal because this is a metal object. The person on the front must be an important individual because otherwise, why would the society put this person on such a permanent object? Also, students tend to play it safe when you give them the opportunity to give inferences. And so part 2 of having the students share out what their partners came up with is then to ask them to go back. Go back to their evidence, go back to their observations, and I want you to come up with a wildly outrageous claim supported by the evidence on your artifact. And so, as they examine the penny even closer, they come to see, oh, on the face side it says, "In God we trust," over the individual. Perhaps that individual on the front is a god, and next to that individual is the word liberty, so perhaps the god's name is Liberty. Now there's a set of 4 numbers. The artifact I have is different from the artifact my partner has, etc. So that could possibly be a year, it could possibly be the number of followers that this god has. Then they find on the back more support potentially for the individual on the front being a god. For if you look, the building on the flip side looks a bit like a temple, and if you look so closely, you can see the individual or a statue between the center columns on the building in the back. Funny language, e pluribus unum, seems to be different. The society could be bilingual, or that could be the sacred chant rising out of the people calling in the temple of liberty. Where is this all taking place? In the United States of America, where it says United States of America on top. And how long have they been worshiping such a god? For about 1 century, because it says 1 cent. So this activity really gets students thinking outside of the box. It gets them identifying evidence, supporting their claims with evidence, and this is really a great way to start off the year. It's low risk, it's an everyday object that they've seen but probably haven't looked at, and it really sets the stage for where we go as social studies teachers throughout the rest of the year. We want our students making arguments. We want our students supporting their claims with evidence. And this activity, as silly and ridiculous as it is, has our students doing just that in the very first weeks of school. Give it a shot. I'll link some Google Docs down below. And if you guys like it, stick around. There's more like this bound to come. This is Dwight Stevenson. This is Social Studies for the 21st Century. I'll see you guys later. Bye.